Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmat Śrīla Bhaktivedanta Vāman Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmat Śrīla Bhaktivedanta Vāman Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmat Śrīla Bhaktivedanta Vikram Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Ashtara Shatashmat Śrīla Bhaktivedanta Swami Mahārāja Śrīla Prabhupāda ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmat Śrīla Bhakti Prajñāna Keśava Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmat Śrīla Jagat Guru Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda ki jai. Jagat Guru Śrīla Prabhupāda ki jai. Tadiya Śrīla Puja Mahamahotsav ki jai. Titi Palankari Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Śrīla Prabhupāda Parishad Vrinda ki jai. Shri Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Śrīla Bhāgavat Śrīla Babaji Mahārāja ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Śrīla Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannatha Babaji Mahārāja ki jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Raghunath Shrada Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Naam Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaur Mandala Vaja Mandal Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishyavarata Giriraj Mahārāja ki jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Yamuna Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yoga Maya ki jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmat Śrīla Gaur Govinda Goswami Mahārāja ki jai. Tadiya Shubha Tirubhav Titi ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shinitai Gaura Premanande Hari 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 Bol. So I'm going to read some of my favorite articles, actually, because I wasn't satisfied with just with what little we read this morning, so I wanted to read some more. So I'm just sharing my screen. 1 second, let me open it up. Okay, guys, give me 1 second. Okay, there it is. Yeah, so this article is phenomenal. It's actually, anyways, I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm just going to start reading it. Okay. So, where is it? Raising the divine temple of the Bhāgavat and unfolding the ultimate conception of Parakiya by Srila Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Thakur Prabhupada from Srila Prabhupāda Harikatamrita, the immortal nectar of Srila Prabhupada's sermons on Lord Hari. And I'll just check every now and then to see if there are any comments or anything. Okay. The vast palace of the Gaudiya Math has been externally manifest. But now there are several important sacred texts that must also be manifested in this world in order to perfectly establish and preserve the subject matter of internalized pure devotional service to Sri Hari, Hari Bhajan. By manifesting the temple, and there's a footnote here. It says, in the original Bengali article, the words used here were Kirtan Charcha Mandir and Natya Mandir. A Kirtan Charcha Mandir is the part of the temple wherein the message of Godhead is discussed. And a Natya Mandir is the section in front of the altar where the devotees worship the Lord, especially through Sankirtan. So by manifesting the temple made of both Grantha Bhāgavat, the sacred text related to Bhagavan, and Bhakta Bhāgavat, the devoted worshippers of Bhagavan who constantly sing his divine glories, the transcendent topics about Sri Hari will be propagated throughout the world for far longer than by manifesting temples, of marble and brick. So the Grantha Mandir, the manifesting the temple made of the Grantha Bhāgavat and the Bhakta Bhāgavat. These will be, yes, okay. A person's lifelong acronym of assets has been engaged in establishing a place of refuge, a fort from which to preach the message of the Supreme Lord. Yet one taking shelter there must still protect himself from the fellowship of ungodly folk. That is to say, he must save himself from the chaotic sway of this degraded age and preach the message of Godhead from his own station. Consequently, there is a need to disseminate many more sacred texts. The topic of devotional service to the Supreme Lord, Bhagavat Bhakti, will remain in this world if the temple made of these sacred texts and of the ideal lives of his devoted worshippers is manifest. The Srimad Bhagavatam. It is essential that a genuine elucidation of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam be written. It must not merely be the excess verbosity of scholars who are expert in utterance, nor an exhibition of prakrita sahajas, the capricious imitationists, who accept their cheaply conceived fantasies as a part of absolute reality. Rather, for those who earnestly thirst to serve transcendent beauty, and in whom ardent spiritual greed for such service has arisen, this commentary will be considered most desirable to read. There is no treatise in existence that compares to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Its narrations are not mythology. One who makes a truly impartial study will realize that a sacred text like the Srimad Bhagavatam has never been excelled, nor can it ever be. Within the Srimad Bhagavatam, progressively evolved conceptions of the Absolute are demonstrated in sequence. The preliminary conception is doubtfulness of the existence of any supreme truth, samshaya. Then come the denial of the personal Absolute, nastikya, acceptance of the Absolute as impersonal and featureless, nirguna, the theory that God exists but is neuter, kliva, the potent Godhead, purush, and then the potent and his potency, mithuna. The conception next evolves to swakiya, the eternal matrimony of the supreme male and his consort. And finally, Parakiya, the paramour conception of the divine couple. This final theme, Krishna Lila, appears in the 10th canto. So what was the necessity of composing the previous 9 cantos? In these, a foundation is made in preparation for introducing the absolutely autocratic loving affairs of the supremely independent Sri Krishna. These loving affairs are the paramount subject of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The first 9 cantos presents the rudimentary theories of doubt up to the conception of wedded love of God. And in the 10th canto, in the chapters like Gopi Geet, the paramour conception is revealed. Prior to the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, many may have examined the Srimad Bhagavatam, but only those who have read the Srimad Bhagavatam after reading his biographical anthology, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which was compiled by Srila Rupa Goswami's foremost adherent, Srila Kaviraj Goswami, and have made their study of the Srimad Bhagavatam while remaining inside its shelter, take to heart its real purpose and explicit theme. Professional orators and Parakiya, prakrita sahajas conceal the divine intended method of narrating the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam must be expressed in virtue of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and in line with the path of Srila Rupa Goswami. The genuine commentary of the 10th canto shall not be written as so to conceal this method. Countless sahajas have delivered such commentaries simply for gratification of general people. Thus they have cleared a path to hell for themselves and others. Within the Srimad Bhagavatam, the increasing excellence of the intrinsic love between the Supreme Lord, Vishai, our Savior, and his servitors, Ashray, our Sevak, is readily traced through each of the successive stages from contracted, sankuchita, to slightly budding, Ishat Mukulita, developing or flowering, Pushpita, expanding or blooming, Vardita, mature or fully developed, Paripushta, and finally, profusely exuberant or perfected, Prapakva. And there's a footnote here. Where is the footnote? Oh, compare with the story of Gopakumar and Brihad Bhagavatamrita. In each successive chapter, Gopakumar meets devotees who poses progressively higher degrees of love for Bhagavan. So within the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find this increasing excellence of the intrinsic love between the Supreme Lord and the successive stages, and his servitors in the successive stages. Yes, okay. Similarly, as the wish-fulfilling tree of the Srimad Bhagavatam unfolds, all conceptions of the Supreme Absolute are chronicled as they evolve through doubt, the denial of the Absolute, the impersonal Absolute, the personal but impotent God, the potent with his potency, the conception of wedded love with the Supreme, and finally, the superlative conception of Parakiya, the Supreme as a paramour. For one who anxiously longs to serve transcendent beauty through the Parakiya conception, there is no entity that can award the fruit of their determined endeavor other than the wish-fulfilling tree of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Throughout all the material universes, or beyond them, or across the Viraja in Brahmaloka, the endless incorporeal firmament, or even in any of the innumerable Vaikuntha planets, there is no entity besides the Srimad Bhagavatam that is capable of yielding the desired fruit of such aspirations. In considering the Parakiya conception, 4 gradations of increasing excellence are observed. Initially, it is overly tender and immature, Taruna. Gradually, it becomes astringent, Kashai, then ripe, Pakva, and finally, fully ripened, Prapakva. And there's a footnote here. These 4 gradations are illustrated as follows. The stage Taruna is seen in the tender love of the gopis before their first meeting with Krishna, Purvarag. The stage of Kashai is seen in the love of those gopis who were checked by their husbands and other family members when Krishna called them with his flute, whereas the stage of Pakva is seen in the love of the gopis who abandoned everything and were able to go to him at that time. When Krishna left the gopis after Raslila, he submerged them in separation from him and removed their pride. Each gopi had perceived that Krishna was dancing exclusively with her, and thus she developed pride in her extreme good fortune, so Bhagya Mada. Subsequently, they sang Gopi Geet, feeling the severe pain of separation from him. When he reappeared, Maharas began. The gopis' condition at that time illustrates Prapakva, or fully ripened Parakiya Bhav. It is solely this final stage of Parakiya Bhav that Krishna wants to relish. So in considering the Parakiya conception, 4 gradations of increasing excellence are observed. Okay, and so then it's Taruna, Pakva, Kashai, Prapakva. These gradations can be perceived by the topmost devotees who earnestly long to serve transcendent beauty. That is to say, it can be perceived by the Rasik and Bhavuk Bhaktas as they relish the transcendental nectar of the Srimad Bhagavatam. By hearing the explanations of the Srimad Bhagavatam sung by a liberated Paramahamsa like Shukadev Goswāmī, a qualified listener like Parikshit Mahārāja, who is fully convinced regarding the temporary nature of human life, will at once become immersed in relishing the nectar of the Srimad Bhagavatam and remain there forever. Thereafter, such a qualified listener forgets all his prior lower interests that were unrelated to Krishna and becomes completely untouched by any worldly attachment. A precise, written explanation of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, grounded in profound and thorough deliberation, is indispensable. Indeed, such a composition, arranged in congruence with the Rupanuga Gaudiya conception, the conception of Sri Chaitanya Dev's most distinguished apostles headed by Śrīla Rupa Gosvāmī, elucidating the 10th canto's chapters such as Ras Panchadhyay, Brahmar Gīt, and Gopi Gīt, must be set forth without fail. The world is in want of actual beauty, or Rupa, the conceptions propounded by Sri Rupa, for currently only Kurupa abounds, misshapen conceptions that are opposed to his. In order to broadcast their cleverness and prematurely profess their own elevated status, the Sahajas recklessly amuse themselves by dallying with these lofty branches of the 10th canto. Abolishing their misguided interpretations is requisite, as is composing the actual commentaries on Brahmar Gīt, Gopi Gīt, and the rest. And see these additions. This is my Gurudev's Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, chapters 1 through 8, cantos 1 through 4, Sri Ras Panchadhyay, and Gopi Gīt. And books that are being worked on right now are Brahmar Gīt right now. It's being worked on. Negation is not enough. Until now, we have simply occupied ourselves in the process of negation, rejecting atat, literally that which is not. For 8 years, our periodical, Gaudiya, has extensively discussed such issues. The Sahajas can be greatly benefited by studying these articles. However, it is not possible to become advanced in the subject matter of Hari Bhajan if we limit the scope of our endeavors either to simply negating atat or to performing favorable action. While the benefit of singly performing favorable actions that are related to bhakti is not lost even after unlimited lifetimes, still, in this very lifetime, those actions will grant neither emancipation from the mortal sphere, nor the perfection of the soul, nor the ability to perform real Hari Bhajan. The attainment of Krishna will remain completely out of reach for one who does not become captivated by his graceful, beautiful form and qualities. But those who have developed real greed for Rupa, graceful beauty, who are longing to serve the graceful beauty, they alone gain intimacy with Krishna. Searching for graceful beauty. The name Sri Rupa is what is understood by the word Rupa, or graceful beauty. Only they who long to serve graceful beauty know the meaning of Hari Bhajan. They completely depend on the guidance of Sri Rupa and place all their hopes in following him. The lotus feet of Sri Rupa Manjari are the sole object of adoration and service, and eternally remaining at her lotus feet is the only perfection for which they yearn. It is they who are truly searching for graceful beauty. The commentary on the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam must be fashioned for them. It is true that we do not approve of the fraudulent interpretations of Brahmar Gīt and Gopi Gīt propounded by the Sahajas. But then we must also provide the real explanations in place of the condemned ones. Simply rejecting adverse elements by declaring, not this, offers no real assistance. The positive element, it is this, must be established. Rejecting adverse elements is but negation in the absence of any positive activity. The impersonal aspect of the Absolute, which is without any comprehensible features, is designated by the word tat, which literally means that. Simply trying to realize tat by exhaustively negating all limited matter is not enough. Leaving aside the dry investigation of tat, one must enter into the pastimes of sa, which literally means he, the absolute personality. There's a footnote here. Absolute personality appears in English in the original Bengali article. Okay. Yes, that's why Srila Prabhupada, he'd always write the personality of Godhead, to make it very clear, the person, he, sa. So he, the absolute personality, the infinite reservoir and original perfection of all transcendent features. One must enter into his pastimes by sequentially realizing the true and absolute nature of his name, his form, his qualities, and the unique glory of his intimate associates. He is the divine nectar, ras. He is the absolute form of all sublime nectarian humors in their entirety. Srila Rupa Goswami explains, Akila Rasamrita Murti, Prasarimara Ruchi Ruda Taraka Pali, Kalita Shama Lalito, Radha Prayan Vidur Jayati. It's the first verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Sri Krishna Chandra is supremely glorious. He is the condensed form of all the eternal supermundane rasas. Indeed, he has not neglected the full expression of any divine sentiment. Just see how he subjugates the extremely submissive Gopi Taraka, just as the vernal full moon outshines a tiny star. Her own effulgence totally engulfed by his brilliance. And Pali, who is controlled by him, is just like a constellation, keeping the moon at her bosom. Sorry. His rays overpower her as well. When the vernal full moon accepts the night sky as a playground, the atmosphere becomes ideal for love dalliance. In the same way, Sri Krishna makes Shama, who is like the dark blue vault, and Lalita, who is love dalliance personified, his very own. He comes under the control of the prem of Srimati Radhika, who is the embodiment of Mahabhav and the origin of all the Yuteshwaris, just as the full moon comes under the powerful influence of the Radha constellation in the spring season. Srimati Radhika's love defeats him. She is his everything, without which he's just the lonely moon. That's all a translation of that one little verse. The pinnacle of all our expectations. We will follow Sri Upadamrita, the essential ambrosial commandments propounded by Srila Rupa Goswami. We will abandon what is unfavorable and accept what is favorable, but we will never consider the practice of accepting what is favorable to be enough to maintain the progressive flow of our bhakti. We will not become degraded, losing our healthy spiritual consciousness like the epileptic who, tortured by reoccurring seizures, violently falls to the ground unconscious. Filled with intense enthusiasm, we will actively cultivate the tendencies of our minds, bodies, and words in the service of Krishna's name and character, Krishna Anushilan. Situate ourselves in Mathura and Braj, the fully transcendental, I don't know this word, facsimiles. God, sorry, I need to look this up. An exact copy, especially written or printed material. Okay. So, filled with intense enthusiasm, we will cultivate the tendencies of our minds, bodies, and words in the service of Krishna's name and character, Krishna Anushilan. Situate ourselves in Mathura and Vraj, the fully transcendental facsimiles, exact copies of Krishna's unmanifest eternal abodes, and sing the glorification of his holy name and sublime nature. Thus we will follow the clear path set forth by Srila Rupa Goswami. Then we'll be able to engage in smaran. The act of meditating on Krishna and thus remembering him constantly. We will attain permanent residence on the bank of Radhakund and the beautiful forest grove belonging to our most worshipful goddess. Remaining there forever, we will engage in service to the divine couple under the direction of our eternal guides, whose hearts are the permanent resting place of love for Krishna, Ashray. Outwardly, we will never leave the shelter of Krishna's holy name, and internally, enveloped in spiritual time, the eternal eightfold divisions of the day, Ashtakal, we will serve the most cherished, beloved King Vrishabhanu's daughter. We will serve the most cherished, beloved of King Vrishabhanu's daughter. That is, we will serve Sri Krishna, the most beloved of Radharani, for all time. This achievement is the pinnacle of all our expectations. We have no aspiration besides this. Furthermore, we cannot conceive that any higher aspiration exists, even for greatly liberated souls. The compassionate gift of Sri Chaitanya. In truth, our divine guide, Sri Guru, who is the beloved servant of Krishna, the holy name of Krishna, the Srimad Bhāgavatam, which unfolds the pastimes of Krishna, Sri Radha Govinda themselves, and Sri Chaitanya, who is known as Sri Gaur Sundar, the combined form of Radha and Krishna, are all non-different features of the absolute truth. Sri Guru, Srimad Bhāgavatam, Radha Govinda, and Sri Gaur Sundar. They are all non-different features of the absolute truth. We need not become like the fruit of workers and empiricists who try to fulfill their separate interests by the worship of 5 deities, Panchopasana. And there's a footnote. The unauthorized system of Panchopasana entails worship of the 5 principal controllers of the material universe, Vishnu, Shiva, Ganesh, Surya, and Durga. Adherents of the Panchopasana system consider the forms of these 5 deities temporary and imaginary, and meditate on them as a means to ultimately merge in impersonal Brahma. So we need not become like those Panchopasaks. Their service is never meant for the pleasure of Krishna. Instead, we will render truly pleasing service to Krishna in 5 ways to his 5 non-different features. First, we will serve him in his aspect of his own beloved servant, our divine guide, Sri Guru. Second, we will serve him as his holy name, his incarnation as the transcendental sound. Third, we will serve him as the Srimad Bhāgavatam. Fourth, we will serve him as Radha Krishna. And fifth, we will serve him as Sri Gaur Sundar. Interesting that Gaur Sundar comes at the end. Furthermore, we will worship Krishna with all 5 primary transcendental humors, Pancharas, as a devotee, as a servant, as a friend, a guardian, and a lover. By becoming the devoted follower of Srila Rupa Gosvāmī, Rupanuga, we will worship Krishna in the paramour conception of Madhura Ras, which completely contains all 5 rasas. We will not be content simply by rejecting the unfavorable, nor will we expect to flourish in bhakti simply by accepting the favorable. Rather, we will always actively cultivate the tendency to arrange for Krishna's pleasure, Krishna Anushilan. Sri Chaitanya Dev appeared before us as the embodiment of infinite magnanimity. He appeared before us as the embodiment of infinite magnanimity, compassion, and kindness, Audarya Vigraha, for he freely bestowed upon us Unata Ujjvala Ras, the most elevated, brilliant conception of devotional service and paramour love, which had not been revealed for millions of eons. By immersing ourselves in the endless ocean of his magnanimity, we will become the rightful recipients of that same rare treasure. Following in the footsteps of Sri Swarup Damodar Prabhu, his most confidential companion, we will recite, Helo Dunita Kedaya Vishadaya Pronila Damodaya Samyat Shastra Vivadaya Rasadaya Chittar Piton Madaya Shashvar Bhakti Vinodaya Samadaya Madhurya Maryadaya Shri Chaitanya Daya Nideta Vadaya Bhuya Amandodaya. From Shri Chaitanya Chandrodaya Natak 8:14, quoted in Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya-lila 10:119. O Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, ocean of compassion, may your auspicious mercy be awakened everywhere. It easily dispels all kinds of mundane lamentation, and it illuminates everything with purity. It thoroughly awakens supreme transcendental bliss and removes all confusion arising from disparities among scriptures. Your auspicious mercy bestows all of the transcendental humors headed by paramour love and intoxicates the soul, thus vanquishing his absorption in his mortal frame. In other words, because he is situated in the fully condensed bliss of separation, his heart surges with divine madness and delusion. Your mercy perpetually stimulates bhakti's own delightful nature, so that by the influence of the original transcendental Cupid, profuse ecstatic transformations are aroused that plunder the soul's faculty of discrimination between right and wrong. The appearance of your mercy heralds the complete cessation of all the soul's selfish desires, and at the same time, it confers the last limit of divine sweetness. Your boundless mercy and the freedom of unmeasuring love recklessly distributes the most valuable benediction without any restriction. Please awaken your causeless mercy within my heart. Translated from Srila Prabhupada Harikatamrita, published by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. First published in Raise of the Harmonists, number 7. That's the kind of article that you need to read a bunch of times. And every time you read it, like there's too much in there. Anyhow, yeah, pretty amazing, huh? I'm just gonna see quickly if there are any comments. Okay. A life of devotion. Oh, cool. Awesome. Rukmini, that's Rukmini, right? It says Facebook user, but I'm sure that's Rukmini. Okay. Cool. So now we're going to read Remembering Srila Prabhupada in Separation on His Appearance Day by Srimad Bhakti Prajñāna Keśava Gosvāmī Mahārāja. This is such a mind-blowing article. Also, it's one of my favorite of Param Guru's articles. Praying for mercy on the occasion of Vyas Puja. Tate Krishna, and these are all, even the article that I read before, yeah, it's an excerpt, it's not the full thing. So, praying for mercy on the occasion, this is also an excerpt, it's not the full article, because it's, yeah. Praying for mercy on the occasion of Vyas Puja. Tate Krishna bhaje kore gurur sevan, Maya jal chute pai, Krishnera charan. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 22-25. Only by simultaneously performing Guru Seva and Krishna Bhajan does a bound jiva become liberated from the web of Maya and attain the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. These words from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita are echoed in the following statement. By performing Sri Vyas Puja, one simultaneously serves Guru and Krishna. This is from the Vyas Puja offering of a disciple of Srila Prabhupada published in the Weekly Gaudiya, year 4, issue 25, page 590. Hence, the regulation to perform Vyas Puja on the appearance day of Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada, who is most worshipful, is established according to the teachings of the Gaudiya acharyas. On this occasion of Vyas Puja, I have been ordered to serve the spiritual magazine, which is like one of Srila Gurudev's bodily limbs. I fully realize my complete incapacity to do so, and am therefore calculating my misfortune. Those who are Guru Das, honorable servants of Shri Guru, are my sole well-wishers, and they are able to deliver me from this calamity. To remain under their guidance is the pinnacle of service to Shri Guru. I therefore offer my sincere prostrated obeisances at the lotus feet of all of the servitors of Srila Gurudev. Regarding them to be my fellow God brothers, in dealing with them in a mood of friendship or sakya, I have differed with them. But now, after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, I realize in the core of my heart just what I have done and am thus condemning my life. O servitors of Shri Guru, it is you who are the true worshippers of Vyas Puja. Please bestow your merciful glance upon me. Please do not neglect me upon seeing my worthlessness, but kindly engage me in dasya, or servitude, through glorification of Shri Guru and Gauranga. This is my heartfelt prayer at your lotus feet. The Sarup, or embodiment of Srila Gurudev. Following in the footsteps of Shri Vyas and Vyasaki, Srila Shukadev, the servitors of Shri Guru have informed me about Srila Gurudev through scriptural statements such as Gaur Jan Sangakoro Gauranga Boliya. Associate with the followers of Gaur, knowing them to be non-different from Gauranga. Acharyamam vijaniyat. Know the acharya to be my own self. And shakshad haritvena samasta shastre. All scriptures concur that Sri Guru is Hari himself. At the same time, however, the servitors of Sri Guru have instructed me to consider him as the dearest associate of Hari, kintu prabodhya priya eva tasya. In Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila 145, Srila Kaviraj Goswami has also elucidated the position of Sri Guru by saying, Guru Krishna Rupahan Shastrara Pramani. All Shastras corroborate that Sri Guru is non-different from Krishna. He continues, Guru Rupe Krishna Kripa Korena Bhakta Gani. In the form of Guru, Sri Krishna bestows mercy upon his devotees. Accordingly, the statements of the Mahājans and the examples provided in the scriptures establish clearly that Sri Guru is the Sarup, or embodiment of Bhagavan. In the same way, I acknowledge that the servitors of Sri Guru as non-different from Bhagavan also, and consider them my Shiksha Gurus. Just see how much honor our Param Gurudev had for all his godbrothers. In Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila 147, Srila Kaviraj Goswami has said, Shiksha Guru Keta Jani Krishnera Sarup. One should know the Shiksha Guru to be the Sarup, or embodiment of Sri Krishna. O eternal servitors of Sri Guru, the sole reason you have appeared in this material world is to deliver those like me, the lowest of mankind, who have fallen in the mire of sin. Although I have heard your transcendental teachings about the supermundane nature of Srila Gurudev, my conception of him as a mortal being has not dimmed even slightly. Delusion and malice are the root cause of this. Vani Kirtan, Srila Prabhupada's innermost desire. I once shared this on Facebook, this quote. Vani, or sound, is received through one sensory organ only, the ears. In other words, the other four senses are impotent to receive it. It is impossible to approach an object that lies beyond the senses through the medium of the senses. Indeed, we attain auspiciousness to the extent we are able to limit the involvement of the senses. This is precisely why Shravan, hearing, and Kirtan, chanting, are considered superior to the other limbs of bhakti. If my mentality of considering Sri Guru to be a mere mortal has not vanished after hearing the kirtan of transcendental instructions from your lotus mouths, then my performance of the limbs of bhakti executed through the other senses is kirtan. Although limbs of bhakti other than Shravan and Kirtan exist, they do not bestow the highest result without Kirtan. Therefore, by the boundless mercy of you all, I've been able to understand that Kirtan is independent and the topmost sadhan. Only bhakti characterized by Shravan and Kirtan constitutes preaching, and is Bhāgavat Mata, the Manopishta of Sri Chaitanya. Whereas bhakti that involves the construction of mats and temples, service to the deities, archan, and so on, is Pancharatrik Mata, the system of formal deity worship. You have allowed me to understand that the sole ontological reason for Srila Prabhupada's appearance was to preach the conceptions of the Bhāgavat Parampara. Kirtan is the sole fruit of Kirtan. Kirtan alone is seva, and Kirtan is also prem. Srila Jiva Goswami has written in his Krama Sandarbha, Yadyapanya bhakti kalo kartavya tada kirtanakya bhakti samyongenaiva ityuktam. In Kali Yuga, the limbs of bhakti other than kirtan are also to be performed, but only in conjunction with kirtan. Srila Prabhupada has himself said, let there be representatives of the Pancharatric process. Let the temples be constructed and the deities worshipped. But those who belong to the better class, the higher class, engage in preaching activities. To propagate Vaikuntha Nam everywhere is the most cherished desire of Mahaprabhu. Our preaching process should be like this. Let pamphlets be printed profusely. It does not matter. Let pamphlets be printed profusely. It does not matter whether or not the mats and temples are erected. Even in his final instructions, Srila Prabhupada specifically cautioned us. We have not come to this world as masons to deal with stone or wood. We are peons. We are peons of Sri Chaitanya Dev's message. Let people practice any one or several of the limbs of bhakti independently of kirtan. We shall practice only kirtanakya bhakti as instructed by Srila Prabhupada. I also shared this quote on Facebook. This is a really good one. One must present one's ears to hear the Vani. Because I maintain the conception that Srila Prabhupada was an ordinary human being, none of his words ever entered my ears. Therefore, he would often say, first prepare your ears, develop transcendental Shraddha. By doing so, you will attain the qualification to hear the Siddhanta of the Bhāgavat. Now I realize in the core of my heart the essence of this instruction. Although I remained by Srila Prabhupada for about 18 years, till 1937, his teachings on what is ultimately beneficial and what is temporarily pleasing, Shreya and Preya, on following and mere imitation, Anusaran and Anukaran, on what is real and what is fake, Ashal and Nakal, on ontology and morphology, on spirituality and ordinary conduct, and on associating with the Transcendental Personality's form and teachings, Vapu and Vani, as embodied by the Gaudiya magazine, did not enter my ears, nor could I realize the difference between these categories. This is a mistranslation. It shouldn't be on spirituality and ordinary conduct. It should just be on spirituality and worldliness. I mean, like the spiritual and material. Yeah, that should just be the spiritual and material. Anyways, sorry. Therefore, I pray to the servitors of Sri Guru to help me first present my ears. Until I ready my ears for this purpose, I will be the subject of the statement, Upadesho himurkanam prakopaya nashantaye. Instructions given to fools serve only to anger them, not pacify them. The transcendental body of Srila Prabhupada. Due to my misfortune, I never became qualified to perceive the body of Srila Prabhupada as a transcendental, eternal deity full of knowledge and bliss, although you have all educated me on this repeatedly. Upon noting my mundane conception of him, Srila Prabhupada would, from time to time, sweetly and knowingly enact being ill. Endowed with wicked intelligence, I would approach to serve him, trying to touch his body with my material hands, etc. But remaining autonomous, he would at once present his illusory form, his Maya Deha, and captivate my demoniac propensity to serve him for my own interests. In reality, the transcendental body of Srila Prabhupada cannot be diseased or possess any abnormality. But at that time, I could not understand this even slightly. How can I, a complete sense enjoyer, a kami, and a yogi, like Ravan, touch anything other than Maya? In other words, the illusory Sita. Where is the qualification to touch Sita, the embodiment of the transcendental potency, the Chit Shakti, who is Lakshmi residing on the lap of Sri Ram? I could not realize anything about the transcendental nature of Srila Prabhupada, having been cheated of his real mercy. And thus I have been deprived forever. Such is the result of not allowing his fully conscious words to enter my ears. This, indeed, is my extreme misfortune. Disappearance pastime of the Acharya. Srila Prabhupada observes that a wicked person like me, who egotistically considers himself to be a servant, had started brimming with such arrogance that at every step and at every moment, he was intent on usurping Srila Prabhupada's position, regarding himself to be equal to him. At that time, Srila Prabhupada decided to teach a lesson to a simple person like me, who is eternally conditioned and whose mentality is harder than stone, non-combustible like mica, and dry like fire, by suddenly manifesting an extremely unbearable pastime that was harder than a thunderbolt and had even more burning power than fire. In 1936, just before concealing his manifest pastimes, Srila Prabhupada was residing at Purushottam Mat, atop Chatak Parvat in his appearance place, Sri Puri Dham. Observing my reluctance to follow his instructions, he said to me, "No one understands and accepts my message anymore. There is therefore no use for me to remain in this world. It is best that I leave." At that time, I was unable to understand his compassionate intention and protested. And to my great misfortune, he unexpectedly struck me with this thunderbolt at dawn on Thursday, 1st January 1937. Srila Prabhupada saw me as a sense enjoyer and as an ahangra upasak, one who identifies himself with his object of worship. To bestow upon me the teaching of bhakti ras endowed with renunciation, vairag yug bhakti ras, he many times expressed his desire for me to accept the renounced order of life, sannyas. But because of my misfortune, I could not accept it at that time. Therefore, to teach me renunciation, which can destroy my mentality of identifying myself with the body and the attachment to anything related to the body, he enacted his disappearance pastime. Words of consolation at the time of his departure. To console me, the dearmost associates of Guru have acquainted me with the statements of Sri Shukadev, the son of Vyas, in the 31st chapter of the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which recount Sri Hari's departure. Rajan parasya tanuprij jananan vyadyeha maya vidambanam avehi yata natasya Shrishtat manetam anuvishya vihritta chante samhritta chatma mahino parata saaste. Srimad Bhagavatam 11:31-11. O king, you should apprehend that a stage actor remains unchanged, even though while on stage before his audience. You should apprehend that a stage actor remains unchanged, even though while on stage before his audience, he accepts various roles in which he enacts birth and death. Similarly, the acts of Krishna, the super soul of all, in which he takes birth and disappears in the Yadu dynasty, may resemble the birth and death of embodied beings, but this is simply an act of his illusory potency. In reality, the Supreme Personality Bhagavan himself, has created this universe and entered it as its supersoul to enact his divine play. And again, at the time of destruction, he annihilates and winds up the entire creation within himself, and then passively situates himself in his own transcendental glory. The eternal form of the Acharya Dev is composed of knowledge and bliss, and remains constitutionally unchangeable, just like a dramatic performer who appears to go through various transformations during his performance, but remains the same unaltered person. On the stage of this world, the Acharya Dev merely acts out birth, death, and so forth, all of which we can perceive using our knowledge-acquiring senses. The birth and death of an ordinary living entity is filled with pain and suffering, but the appearance and disappearance of the spiritual conscious form of the Atimartya Acharya, who is beyond the control of the material nature, is full of joy. To astonish his audience, a magician may use a weapon to execute a person standing before him. An ignorant child cries upon seeing this, but those who know better understand that the killing is merely an illusion and do not lament for the person slain. While the unbearable disappearance pastime of the Acharya is like a stage act, an ignorant person like me who does not comprehend this cannot be consoled. Thus, I perceive his disappearance pastime, which is full of joy, to be extremely painful and heartrending. Thus, while the servants of Sri Guru are feeling true separation, I am lamenting like a Sudra. I have heard from you all that viraha, separation, enhances the elegance of service. And when anything that stimulates remembrance of one's objective of worship appears on the path of one's vision, it progressively makes one's attachment for that object unflinching. Separation looks to enhance the highest pleasure of one's worshipful object. In the state of lamentation, however, the bound jiva becomes bewildered and thus inactive. His energy capacity disappear, and he becomes afflicted by grief. Due to the absence of service, one cannot see in him any transformation akin to the enhancement of joy. Thus I, like an ignorant fool, a Shudra, have become overwhelmed by lamentation. I am unable to discover any enthusiasm within. Rishikesha Sevanam, to serve the master of the senses with my senses, has become a formidable task for me. The Acharya's affection for his devotees. One second, I just want to close my window because the kirtan going on outside is distracting for me. So I'll be back. 1 second. Okay. The Acharya's affection for his devotees. On the appearance day of Srila Prabhupada, all that stirs in my mind is the account of his disappearance. That is why I am experiencing grief at a time of joy. Seeing my misery, the embodiment of auspiciousness, Srila Prabhupada, in order to inspire me, exhibits his appearance day each year soon after the day of his disappearance. Same like my Gurudev. With the hope of again having his darshan through you, his dearmost associates, I have presented myself at your lotus feet. When one is deprived of meeting, the intense pain of separation is relieved only by death. Therefore, to console his devotees' affliction caused by separation, Srila Prabhupada has shown his mercy by manifesting his appearance pastime shortly after that of his disappearance. This is the distinctive quality of his tremendous compassion and bhakta vatsalya, which I am unable to properly express in words. The Acharya's arrival in Sri Dham. Srila Prabhupada doubted that we would heed his instructions. Full of natural pride in his eternal identity, he adopted a grave and silent mood, intending to come to the bank of his ever-dear Sri Radhakund. Understanding his inner intention, the Vaishnavas, as Vishnu Dutas, carried him on their heads and placed him in an especially well-decorated chariot that had many compartments, a metaphor for the special train that carries the body. As Srila Prabhupada entered the largest and most exquisite compartment with his dear servants, other servants followed, entering their respective chambers. That Goloka chariot on the earth planet had come for Srila Prabhupada, Sri Krishna's dearest, and it now traveled at high speed and without interruption, reached Sri Krishna Dham, a metaphor for Krishna Nagar near Navadvip, in the blink of an eye. The Ranakshetra, or battlefield, a metaphor for Ranaghat, the place of Srila Prabhupada's maternal home where he had spent his early childhood, is where the battle between knowledge and realization, Vidya and Veda, took place. As the driver stopped here, Srila Prabhupada, the Acharya, reminded me of his childhood pastime of acquiring knowledge, even though he was inherently possessed of realized knowledge. Like Badva Rishi, he apprised me of many things without actually speaking. And there's a footnote. Vaskali, the disciple of Badva Rishi, inquired from his teacher 3 times about the nature of Brahma. By maintaining silence, Badva Rishi satisfied his inquiry. Since Brahma lies beyond material words, silence was the appropriate response to his question. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada spoke to Srila Bhakti Keśava Gosvāmī Mahārāja through his silence, and reminded him of the teaching that the material ears have no power at all to grasp the divine instructions of Sri Guru. Okay. Sorry, At that time, I could not understand anything he was saying to me due to my ignorance, but I fully realized that any attempts to hear the Vani, or divine instructions, for the personification of transcendental Vani using one's material ears is futile. Traveling from Krishna Dham, Krishna Nagar, the embodiment of Sri Vani, Srila Sarasvatī Prabhu, reached Gaur Dham, which is none different from Krishna Dham. There at Sri Swananda Sukara Kunj, he met with Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur to inform him of his arrival. From there, he went to the bank of Sri Radhakund, which was manifested by the acharya of Sri Chaitanya Mat on the premises of Sri Chandrasekhar Acharya Bhavan at Sri Dham Mayapur, where he met with Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Nearby on the bank of the Kund in Seva Kunj, he was decorated with flowers, garlands, sandalwood paste, and various other ingredients collected by this degraded person. After this unfortunate person beautified his bodily luster, lavanya. And lavanya also means salt. So this is referring to when they throw down salt, when they put them in samadhi. Lavanya has a double meaning. So after this unfortunate person beautified his bodily luster, Srila Prabhupada situated himself in samadhi as the dearmost associate of Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan. To give me the eligibility to render service to the divine couple under his guidance, he took up residence there forever. I now pray to the servants of Sri Gurudev that they may mercifully bestow upon me a fraction of the qualification needed to serve Guru Pad Padma in fulfilling his most cherished desire. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī iti namane. Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Siddhanta Dhvanta Harine. Translated from the Pravandavali of Srimad Bhakti Prajñāna Keśava Gosvāmī Mahārāja, first published in the Rays of the Harmonists, number 16, Kartik 2006. Let's see if there's anybody still there. Okay, there are 3 people. Cool. I'm also going to read this last article. Should we read this one? Yeah, let's just quickly read it. It's not so long. This is just an excerpt of the actual article. So it's not the... Okay. What to reflect upon in times of separation. On this 23rd day of the month of Agrahayan, Friday, 9th December 1949, falls the disappearance day of Srila Prabhupada. It is essential to understand what a disciple must do on the disappearance day of his beloved spiritual master. We should all certainly perform whatever ritualistic ceremonies are recommended for this occasion, and perform them as far as possible according to Vaishnava practices. But rather than consider this any further, I request everyone to remember the Manopishta, our most cherished desire of Srila Prabhupada. This unfortunate soul is presenting, in the form of a grief-stricken, humble offering, only a few aspects of what awakens fully in his heart as he recalls the disappearance of his spiritual master. Consolation is usually necessary at times of separation. Upon receiving it, the heart afflicted by the grief of separation finds relief. Without such solace, the affliction brings a person closer to the 10th stage of life, unconsciousness or death. One will feel separation from the lotus feet of Sri Guru to the extent that one is attached to them. Srila Prabhupada's act of depriving us. Srila Guru Pad Padma has mercifully withheld bhakti from those of us who are proud of our learning. And to ensure our natural benefit, he did not interfere with our miserable condition, our unwillingness to follow his instructions and independence. Witnessing and reflecting upon this unprecedented foresightedness, I am forever sold at his lotus feet. What can Sri Gurudev do for those who desire to be deprived? To interfere with another's independence is to lash his very existence as a conscious being, and is fully contrary to Sri Bhagavan's desire. Sri Gurudev exhibits the pinnacle of service to Bhagavan, and therefore such interference would be at odds with his nature. That said, Sri Guru is bestowing mercy upon his followers even in depriving them so. That said, Sri Gurudev is bestowing mercy upon his followers even in depriving them so, and he thereby lives up to the title of Ocean of Mercy. Who will understand the hidden intention behind his actions? The way to transform my heart, which is intoxicated by the desire to enjoy mundane sense objects, is vanchayit dravanadibhi, to deprive me by offering me mere worldly commodities. We have the tendency to fulfill our desires by enjoying the wealth and belongings of Sri Gurudev, and our foremost duty on this day is to cast this habit into the fire of separation from him, thereby reducing it to ashes. During his physical presence, Srila Prabhupada was merciful to me by supplying me with many comforts. Today, in his absence, I no longer receive the free supply, and therefore I feel acute pain and separation from him. If our need for Sri Guru were based on a feeling of emptiness that came from being bereft of his tutelage, it would be a far superior feeling of separation. Srila Gurudev's perspective, which befits a Paramahamsa. Observing my weakness of heart, Srila Gurudev heaped praise and honor on me, and thus engaged me in service. Encouraging words filled with admiration delight the human senses, and therefore, sadly, I have engaged Srila Gurudev in my own sense gratification, expecting such words from him. What is more, my foolish mind considers itself to be the sole object of Gurudev's praise, which is in fact wholly false, and has thus reached the zenith of pride. Thus, I have buried in the ground the verse, Turnada Pisunichena, as taught by Sriman Mahaprabhu. Srila Gurudev's transcendental liberated position is such that he forever exemplifies the statements, Jahan Jahan Netrapade, Taha Krishna Spure. Wherever he looks and whatever he sees reminds him of Krishna. And Jahan Nadi Deke, Taha Manaye Kalindi. Wherever he sees a river, he sees it as the Kalindi, the Yamuna. This is the nature of Srila Gurudev. Therefore I, whom like a drain brimming with the foul-smelling sewage of this mundane world, appear to Bhāgavat to be the most sacred Kalindi, although I am thoroughly aware of the filth in my heart and can never consider myself to be the Kalindi. Not just any mountain is Giri Govardhan, but the Bhāgavat sees my stony, mountain-like pride as Govardhan, although that mountain is hardly Govardhan for me. Srila Guru Padma has made a special effort to help me progress by praising me profusely. Unable to understand the deeply esoteric nature of his heart, I have become inflated with pride from receiving this praise and constantly claim it from him. Now, in his absence, my sixth sense, the mind, is no longer gratified by his words of admiration. And as I think about this, I long to be with him. But today, on his disappearance day, my duty is to fully obliterate my mountain-like pride by remembering his teachings, which are devastating enough to shake the earth and as grave as a clap of thunder. The essence of Srila Prabhupada's teachings. When Srila Prabhupada instructed us, it was like the roar of a lion, and when he chastised us, it struck us like a thunderbolt. He used language that made the heart quiver. One principal teaching delivered in this way stirs in my heart today. After reflecting upon our bleak future, Srila Prabhupada disseminated elevated teachings pertaining to the path of sadhana in an attempt to save us. Foremost among them is to please Krishna by performing Harinam Kirtan while remaining in the association of sadhus and Vaishnavas. Indeed, Kirtan of Krishna is the only bhajan. This in itself encapsulates the teachings. Indeed, Kirtan of Krishna is the only bhajan. This in itself encapsulates the teaching of Śrīla Rupa and Raghunath Goswāmis. Those who have compiled the Vedic scriptures have never explained bhajan to mean remaining hidden in a secluded place and gratifying one's senses by fostering laziness. Those attached to sense gratification and are lazy are unable to understand the nature of bhajan. On the pretext of doing Harinam, they live in a corner of their homes, which are like dark wells. They consider the mere pulling of rope, as Srila Prabhupada would call it, to be Harinam, and thus they become degraded. That's just sitting in your home, just pulling a rope. That's like, moving the bead to the next bead, to the next bead, pulling rope. All those who are lazy and weak due to a lack of Krishna Shakti consider service to Sri Guru, who is actively absorbed in serving Sri Krishna, to be karma, or ordinary worldly activity. Their inability to differentiate between karma and bhakti pierces the heart of Srila Prabhupada on his disappearance day with a pointed javelin. If engaging all of one's senses in the service of Sri Krishna is karma, are we considered that paralyzing them is Bhagavat Bhakti? Today, on Srila Prabhupada's disappearance day, my heart is feeling pain as I remember the description of the Guru Drohita, the insurrection against Sri Guru, of those jivas who are afflicted with the weakness of heart and who crave fame. Srila Prabhupada uses the words seclusion, nirjan, to advise us to renounce the association of wicked persons, durjan, and to stay in the association of saintly persons, sajan. So nirjan means to reject association with durjan and stay in the association of sajan. All other meanings of seclusion, of nirjan, are against the Vedic scriptures, against rational thought, and against the missionary spirit that is the most cherished desire of Srila Guru Padma. The request of Sri Gaudiya Vedanta Samiti is that you do not engage in behavior that is adverse to the internal desire of Om Vishnu Paramahamsa Swami Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Thakur. You must all assist favorably to bring about his cherished will. For our welfare, Srila Prabhupada preserved his most prized instructions in the form of a song, Dushtaman Tumi Kisera Vaishnav. Today, on his disappearance day, let that song become our life and soul. In this song, Srila Prabhupada has saved, in golden words, the essence of all teachings, so that we may attain service to Srimati Radharani in Parama Unata Ujjvala Ras, the very highest and most dazzling relationship with the divine couple. On his disappearance day, we should remember these instructions through the medium of kirtan. Translated from Sri Gaudiya Patrika, Year 1, Issues 10 to 11. First published in Rays of the Harmonist, issue 15, Kartik 2005. So that means that this was written in, what is that? I think it's 1949. All right, that was a very sobering article. Man, there's so many other ones. Also, all of my Param Gurude's articles on Srila Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Thakur's disappearance day are the best, especially the one in Kriti Ratna, the second article in Kriti Ratna. That one is amazing. And also the Viraha Mangalya. Anyhow. Man, I wish there was just unlimited time so we could read all of these. But I'm going to end now because I don't want to miss Prasad. But thank you for reading with me. I'll do Jai Dwani. Jai Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai Vishnu Om Vishnu Par Ashtatara Shata Shishi Marchala Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Shri Gurudeva Ki Jai Nitilapa Vishnu Om Vishnu Par Ashtatara Shata Shishi Marchala Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai Nitilapa Vishnu Om Vishnu Par Ashtatara Shata Shishi Marchala Bhakti Vedanta Sai Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shmar Śrīla Bhakti Prajñāna Keśava Gosvāmī Mahārāja Ki Jai Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shmar Jagar Guru Śrīla Prabhupāda Ki Jai Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda Ki Jai Tadiya Shubha Vyas Puja Maha Mahotsav Ki Jai Tadiya Avirbhav Titi Ki Jai Titi Palan Kari Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Śrīla Prabhupada Parishad Vrinda Ki Jai Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Śrīla Gaur Kishoras Babaji Mahārāja Ki Jai Nitya Pravishta Śrīla Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitya Pravishta Vaishnav Sarva Bhauma Śrīla Jagannath Das Babaji Mahārāja ki jai. Nitya Pravishta Vishnupāda Ashtara Shatashmad Śrīla Bhaktivedanta Vikram Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki jai. Shri Rupa Nugvarya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Padadasha Raghunath Sharda Gosvāmī Prabhu ki jai. Shri Swarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshada Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Śrīla Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Mahārāja ki jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Yamuna Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Nitya Pravishta Om Vishnupāda Ashtara Shata Shishimad Śrīla Gaur Govinda Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki jai. Tadiya Shubhati Rubhaditi ki jai. Nitya Pravishta Om Vishnupāda Śrīla, I think it's Bhakti Purdev Shoti Gosvāmī Mahārāja, or is it Bhaktisiddhānta Gosvāmī Mahārāja? I actually don't know. Anyways, it's one of their disciplines. Let me just check. Dang it, I don't have it written down. Wait, no, I think I do have it. No. Anyways. Sorry about that. Anyways, whichever one it is. Nitya Pravishta Om Vishnupāda Ashtara Shata. What am I doing? Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shinitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari. Vrindai Tulsidevai Priyai Keśava Krishna Bhakti Paradevi Satyavatai Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyai Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavad Pranams. Hari Bol. Jai Śrīla Prabhupāda ki jai. Hari Bol.